Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del challenges the status quo, questions everything, and empowers you to return to your core beliefs to make your life better. If you're ready to hear the truth and get your roadmap to the lifestyle you really want, the next hour will change your life. And now, your host, self-made millionaire, national award-winning investor of the year, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins. Proudly sitting in for Del Walmsley today, I'm your host, Mike Harrison. Our show today, we have a great one. The title of today's show is The Rules of Money Have Changed, and What Are You Doing About It? Today, people are pursuing wealth accumulation and retirement utilizing methods that were literally created 40, 50, 60 plus years ago in the last century. However, the rules have changed significantly, and millions are on the wrong path, and yet they may not figure out that they are on the wrong path until late in life. To be successful, you must understand today's rules of money. And it's so true. Society is stuck on preaching and adhering to these conventional methods. It surrounds us everywhere we look. It's in the media, it's in magazines, billboards, TVs, pressing us to follow this conventional path. And I'm telling you, these conventional methods are failed. They're failed for a lot of reasons, but they're failed primarily because the rules of money have changed. And most of you out there still adhere to those methods, but in the back of your mind, you know they're failed and you know they're not going to work. I'm telling you, you've got to change, you've got to adapt, or you will not succeed, and you will not have that opportunity to retire with dignity on your terms when you want. And let's go back to history and review a little bit of what I'm talking about. So these two major changes essentially took place in the 70s, and hardly anyone has adjusted. And the first one that took place was in 1971. President Nixon took the United States dollar off of the gold standard. And what did that mean? Essentially, prior to that, the gold standard essentially says that for every dollar that was printed, there was a like and equal amount of value of gold within the U.S. Treasury. So the dollar was backed by gold, and people around the world knew that. They knew that the U.S. dollar was literally, it had a value to it, and you can take it anywhere and you can spend it anywhere because it was backed by the U.S. Treasury. So literally for every dollar we printed, it was backed, and we physically possess the gold here in the United States. Now, there's a lot of reasons why Nixon took us off that standard, and I'm not going to go into all that. It was primarily so he could finance the Vietnam War. So essentially, Nixon could print dollars, but he couldn't print gold, okay? So he had to take us off of the gold standard so that he could finance the Vietnam War. There's a great book that goes into this if you're interested, and it's called Currency Wars. It's by a gentleman by the name of James Reikards, Rikards. It's a quick read. It's a fascinating read. So if you're interested in these kind of items, Currency Wars, gold standard, that sort of thing, check that book out. Now, the second big change to money took place in 1978. And that was the advent of the 401k, the legal code within the IRS, the 401k code that created that program to where you could set money aside within a 401k through a corporation. And more on that, if you want to go back to the podcast and listen, I've got a show called The 5 Myths of the 401k. So I'm not going to go through the failure of the 401k, why it's failing, but it became legal in 1978. But even at that time, when you look at it, when you look about how it was agreed to, the 401k was meant to be a supplement for retirement. It was never meant to essentially carry the load that it does today. It was never meant to be the boat that it's become, because today the 401k that's the end-all be-all of retirement. That is the vehicle to retirement. But at the time, in 1978, it was a different day and age. And so when this came about, essentially it was viewed by those that kind of allowed this to happen as a supplement for retirement. It was supposed to go with the pension. It was supposed to go with, at the time, conventional wealth creation, which was owning your home or owning your farm or owning some land. Saving was still big. You had real interest rates back during this time, not what we have today, actual substantial interest rates. Pensions were still meant to be the primary vehicles for retirement. So keep in mind when these rules came about, it was a different day and age. It was a short time, essentially, in American history. It was 50 years ago, but it was a completely different day and age. It was a day and age when healthcare costs were essentially stable. Now, personal income tax as a whole at that time, your personal income tax might have been a little higher as a percentage, but let me tell you what, the folks in the 70s were not inundated with taxes the way we are today. We are hit from every direction, 17 ways to midnight. And I'm just going to give you a few of how we get hammered by taxes. Cell phone bills, cable bills, the internet, paying for the internet, car registration, gift taxes, fuel taxes, garbage taxes, water taxes, school taxes. There's an Obamacare surtax on investment income, on and on and on. So today, we're literally taxed 97 ways. And you can Google 97 ways Americans are taxed, and you can have a read that will absolutely turn your stomach on how we're taxed. So when these rules of money were created, it was a different day and age. It was a different time. Yet people are trying to create wealth today, 50 years later, using those old methods that were developed to be successful then. And here's where I want to kind of go into a discussion on change, because change can come very, very slow, or change can come very rapidly. And if you're not adapt to change, if you're not understanding what's going on, it can have significant consequences. Look, we live in a day and age today when change is happening at a rapid pace. We have to be educated enough, we have to be adapt enough to see the opportunity, but we also have to be brave enough to take action. When we see an opportunity and we know something's right, we can't sit in our comfort zone, because in today's world, I'm telling you right now, the cost of inaction could very well be worse than the wrong action, okay? And I'm going to use a military analogy here because I love history and I'm hosting the show today. So here we go. Follow me. Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great made his mark 330 to 320 BC. Let me tell you, when Alexander the Great was on the battlefield, the fastest thing on the battlefield in 330 BC was a man on a horse, okay? Let's fast forward 2,100 years later, 2 millennia later, the U.S. Civil War. You know what the fastest thing on the battlefield was? It was a man on a horse. In 2,100 years, that technology had not changed, okay? There was no new technology that was moving men in battle quickly. It was a man on a horse, okay? So cavalry was cavalry, essentially, for 2,100 years. Now, let's look at another span using another military analogy, and let's take a 50-year span. It just kind of coincides when the rules of money were written. These rules were changed in the United States was about 50 years ago. So let's look what happens when you don't adapt to change. And let's go to the time of Napoleon, which was late 1700s, early 1800s, okay? At that time in battle, the tactics were to mass as many men as you could in one spot, tight. And the reason you massed many men in one spot was because when there was a weakness in the enemy's formation, you would exploit that by sending as many men as possible into that weakness, and that's how you exploited the enemy, and that's essentially how you would win the battle, okay? So that's how Napoleon fought. And that's actually how a lot of predecessors before him still fought. And let's come forward 50 years, and let's go to the U.S. Civil War, 1860, okay? In the U.S. Civil War, battlefield tactics were the same as what Napoleon was using. The tactics did not change, but the weaponry improved greatly. They had rifled weaponry and rifled cannons, yet they still would mass these men in these formations, and they would literally charge them in battle, just like their fathers and their grandfathers, and they died by the thousands because the old aristocracy refused to accept that battle had changed. These generals thought they were the best, the brightest, the most successful, and they were following a map. And because of their arrogance and refusal to change the map and adopt, thousands died. So I'm just now getting warmed up. Stay with me. We're going to continue the discussion on the rules of money and change and how people are still clinging to the traditional failed path. This is the Dale Walmsley Radio Show, and I'm your host, Mike Harrison.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes. Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Dale Walmsley Radio Show. I'm your host, Mike Harrison. Today we're discussing how the rules of money have changed and what are you doing about it. If you've got a question about today's show, our number is 877-711-5211, 877-711-5211, or please email me at askmike@luinc.com. That's askmike@luinc.com. Okay, in the last segment, we were talking about the two most major changes in recent history regarding the rules of money. Okay, number one was the fact that our dollar is no longer tied to gold. It's not tied to a universal, tangible asset. It's essentially tied, the quote is, it's tied to the full faith and backing of the U.S. government, end quote. Whatever that means, right? So it essentially means that the dollar is good as long as the U.S. government says it's good. It's good until the day it's not good. What that move by Nixon did was it changed the U.S. dollar from, and follow me here, it changed it from money into a currency. And those are two distinct and different things. And even myself, I use the term interchangeably, but really they're two separate and distinct things. So what you're looking at is currency is a measure of value. It's a medium of exchange, right? That car is worth $10,000. Money is a store of value, okay? It can be, it holds an intrinsic value, and you can spend it anywhere. So the dollar is currency, gold is money, silver is money, but there's other forms of money. So money is a store of value. Now, I'm not encouraging a bunch of you out here to go become gold bugs. In fact, what I want to get to is far, far from that. I just want you to know that the rules have changed so that you can be successful on today's playing field. And let's use another quick analogy here. Let's say there's a chessboard in front of you, and you don't know anything about chess. You don't even recognize the pieces. You've never played the game before. And across from you, your opponent is a decent chess player, not even an expert, just a decent chess player that understands the rules, knows how the pieces move, know the strategy, everything about it. And yet you've got to play this game of chess against this person. And let's say you've got to play for $1,000 a game, and the winner gets $1,000 and the loser pays $1,000. Would you play that game? Would you be successful? Absolutely not. But that's what most of you are doing out there. You're scrimping, you're saving to become debt-free, and every year the value of this quote-unquote freedom from debt is less and less and less. And I'm not talking about conventional debt. I'm talking about good debt. I'm talking about investment debt. You don't even realize it because the rules were changed on you, and you're still living by a system that was created and adapted in the 20th century. It's a system that was successful then, but it's not successful on today's playing field. So let me say this. If you have the wrong commitment or the wrong map, it's only going to take you to the wrong place faster. And that's kind of mind-numbing. Let me give you a thought. You know what else is a store of value? What else is, that's the definition of money, right? How about this? Here's a store of value, a tangible asset that cash flows, like a single-family house or an apartment complex that's got great residents in it, functional housing that's all fixed up and cleaned up and running and performing well and cash flowing. That is a tangible asset, and that tangible asset is a form of money by definition. So let's take a quick comparison. Let's say you have $1 million in cash, and I have 10 single-family homes worth $1 million. And let's fast forward 10 years, and let's play this game here. So your $1 million in cash, my $1 million in 10 single-family homes, each worth $100,000 each. Well, my single-family homes are cash flowing on average in today's dollars, $400 each. That's only going to increase as rents go up. Mine, over 10 years, my 10 homes will pay me $480,000 in cash flow. What did your million pay you? Nothing. Here's another little rule of money. Let me give you this tidbit. Your $1 million is going to depreciate 2% per year over those 10 years. My houses are going to appreciate, even though what we do as investors, we don't count on appreciation. It's one of the last things we look at. We don't base our investment on appreciation. We know it's going to happen, but we're not successful primarily because of the appreciation. So let's say the houses average 5% per year. Again, your $1 million depreciating 2% is worth $817,000. The $1 million is worth less. My $1 million in rent houses is worth somewhere close to $1.6 million, and it cash flowed $480,000. Again, which one would you rather have? But that kind of exposes what's happening with quote-unquote money, with our currency. The 2% depreciation, where did I get that? I got that directly from the Fed, okay? The Fed, the people that manage our money system in the United States, they have a target rate of 2% inflation annually. Many of you may not even know that, but that is one of their primary directions, is to make sure that there is 2% inflation annually. They don't want 3, they don't want 4, they don't want 1 or less than 1, they want 2. So real simple, $100 in savings, next year it's worth 98. The year after that it's worth 96, and then 94, so on and so on and so on. So that's how $1 million becomes $817,000 in just 10 years. Friends, those are part of the new rules of money. Look, interest rates are low, historically low, as in they've been practically they've been zero at the Fed level for quite some time. They're slightly higher than that. So if your money is not moving and turning and moving and turning, it's depreciating, and it's going to be worth less and less and less. It has to keep working. It has to be doing something. It will not grow if it's just sitting there. It's only going to wither away and deplete over time, okay? So that was a big, big change. And the second big change is the adoption of the 401k as the primary vehicle for retirement in America. This 401k is an abject failure, yet no one's admitting it. Most Americans are living check to check. The median value in a 401k for a 52-year-old in America is $82,000. We've done complete shows on this. So this 401k vehicle that came about in the 70s that was supposed to carry the load for everybody, every day it is failing the majority of Americans. It is not the vehicle that it should be. And because these rules have changed, people are on the wrong map. They are still following these tactics that were tested, that were created, that were successful by previous generations, yet they're using them here in the 21st century. They're using them to build and create wealth. They think they're using them to eventually retire on their terms and to get ahead, but they're not. They're getting slaughtered. So you better do something about it, because history is not going to be kind to the 401k generation. When we come back, we'll go into the 3 dumbest moves you can make considering the new rules of money. This is the Dale Walmsley Radio Show, and I'm your host, Mike Harrison.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes. Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Dale Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins. I'm your host, Mike Harrison, and today we've been discussing the rules of money have changed and what are you doing about it. If you'd like to call our show with any questions about Lifestyles Unlimited or investing in passive income or about today's topic, our number is 877-711-5211, 877-711-5211, or please email me at askmike@luinc.com. And I do personally respond to each and every email, and I enjoy your questions and comments. Okay, the rules of money were changed in the 70s, and most people today are trying to build wealth. They're trying to prepare themselves for retirement using tactics that were created by generations before them. These rules were successful in the past, but because of the changes, they're not successful today, okay? So the pension generation, which is also called the silent generation, for most part, them and both the baby boomers lived by a different set than we have today. And these rules changed in the 70s, yet the tactics are the same. Follow me here. What are the tactics today? Go to school so you can get good grades, so that you can get into a good college, and then while you're in college, they're going to probably encourage you to borrow $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 or worse, because that's what's happening. That's what is happening today. It's an absolute crisis. So then you can get the degree, and then once you have the degree, you've got the good job. And with the good job, you then get the opportunity to feed the 401k for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then and only then can you retire with dignity. Those are the tactics, folks. Yet the rules are different today. A dollar is no longer money. It is a currency. And the 401k does not work for the majority of Americans out there. Let's go into 3 of the worst things you can do with your income based on these new rules, okay? So number 1, tried and true, most people know this. I am going to throw a little curve in here, but consumer debt, right? We all know consumer debt is bad. Financing stuff is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about investment debt. I'm talking about consumer debt. Credit cards, cars, and yes, the other C in here, college. And I'm not saying don't go to college. I'm saying don't borrow for college, okay? College debt has become an absolute crisis of huge consequences. It is an epidemic, and it is out of control. And that's per Forbes. That's not just Mike Harrison telling you this. This is real. Look, college debt is going to affect the American society for decades and decades moving forward. It is absolutely out of control. And a big reason is because the colleges themselves are not the ones funding the debt. It's the U.S. government. And so it's almost like a blank check, if you will. And it's non-bankruptable debt, which means that these kids are getting out of school and they're getting this degree and they're getting a job that's paying them $30,000, $40,000, maybe $50,000 a year, yet they've got 2 to 3 times that in debt. And folks, the debt's not getting paid. There are people that are 40 and 50 years old that are still paying on their college debt. So this is an absolute crisis. Do not borrow for college. If you need to reduce your hours, whatever, do it. If it takes you 8 years to get through college, but you get through debt-free, I'm telling you, you'll be much better off. Okay, the number 2 worst thing you can do with your income based on the new rules today, saving, okay? And hear me out on this, but saving just to save is a waste, primarily because of the 2% inflation at a minimum. And with the new rules, your money's got to constantly be turning. So if you're safely setting aside funds so that you can take down a deal or take advantage of a tangible asset, by all means do so. That's we call that keeping your powder dry. But don't just put money aside to save it and call it a college fund, right? Or call it a retirement fund or what have you. If your dollars are not turning based on the new rules, They are withering away. Now, the third worst thing you can do today, based on the new rules, speculating, okay? And by speculating, I'm saying don't gamble your net worth away. Do not play a game of chance with your network. The stock market is absolute speculation. If you don't know all the rules and control what's going on, somebody in Wall Street sneezes and suddenly 10, 20% of your net worth is wiped out. That's called speculating, my friends. It's not when the market will go up. It's when it goes down, because it always happens. What goes up must come down. So those are the three primary rules today based on the new rules of money. Consumer debt, saving, you can't have idle dollars sitting aside, and speculating. Do not play a game of chess, okay? Your investments need to cash flow, and they need to be put in something tangible that does not lose money. It's crucial, and it's what we do as real estate investors. Everything we invest in cash flows because we're doing it correctly, and we don't lose money. Those are two of our primary rules. I want to touch on something that's kind of come about as I'm doing this show, but I want to talk about sharing finances and discussing money with the other generations, okay? My father was part of the silent generation, and I call that the pension generation. My mom is a boomer, and I'm Gen X. You know what you cannot discuss with those two generations at all? I mean, you can talk about everything with divorce, politics, religion, relationships, but God forbid the topic of money comes up and someone needs to have a serious discussion about finances, because those two generations, for the most part, they will clam up, they will get mad, they will leave the room. They absolutely do not want to discuss money or finances. They consider it rude, absolute rude. And the sad thing is that people have to die until you realize just how well, or in most cases, how bad off people are. And when you finally look at it, you almost want to say to yourself, gee, I wish you had said something, because we really could have done something different 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We could have made a change, or I didn't realize how bad you were suffering. But those two generations, whether they're succeeding or failing, they're not discussing their finances. And that's 100% different than what we do as real estate investors here at Lifestyles Unlimited. We will share our finances. We will share our map. We will help others. We will discuss strategies. We will discuss how rules have changed, how strategies have changed. But here's the facts, folks. If people are not sharing their map, if they're not showing others, then corrections by the next generations cannot be made. And that's what's happening today. 21st century, people have the wrong set of ideas. They have a set of ideas that was created 50, 60, maybe longer than that, maybe 70 years ago. And they're following those rules, thinking that those rules will earn them success today. And we're seeing what's happening. We're seeing the failure. But again, sharing finances is important with those you care about. It's important so that you can open the books and you can discuss strategies and you can help one another. But again, if you don't share, if someone's too arrogant or just doesn't want to discuss it for, whatever reason, embarrassment, arrogance, or that they just consider it rude, then that's not helping. That's not helping anybody. So we have a modern strategy at Lifestyles Unlimited. We utilize today's rules and we succeed. And if you'd like to check out, if you're interested in how to create passive income in your life, how to acquire tangible assets that cash flow, I'd like you to attend one of our free workshops. Go to lifestylesunlimited.com, and in the right-hand corner, you will see a free workshop button, and click on that, and you will see where our free workshops are all across the country. You can learn about our strategies that make us huge gains, positive cash flow monthly. we had a case study last Thursday, and there was a couple that literally took a $22,000 investment in one house and made $92,000 in equity in one deal. That's what we're doing. We're not living by 20th century strategies. We're using modern strategies. We realize that the dollar must turn. You have to turn it. You have to move it. We had another couple, 591% return on their original investment on an apartment deal. So pretty amazing. If that doesn't get you stimulated to look at a different path, a different way, nothing will. If you're stuck following the old tactics of building wealth and you realize it's not working, check us out. So we're going to come back on the other side to wrap up the new rules of money and what you can do to play the game utilizing some new tactics in order to succeed.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. I'm your host, Mike Harrison, and today we've been discussing how the rules of money have changed and what are you doing about it. This is our last segment. I encourage you to call at 877-711-5211 if you have a question, 877-711-5211, or if you miss me or if you're catching this on one of our podcasts, reach out to me. Ask Mike at luinc.com. Ask Mike at luinc.com. So I understand we have a caller. We have Alex from Miami. Are you there, Alex?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Great. How can we help you?
My question is, how, if we ever get in a hyperinflation environment, how would rents be adjusted to deal with that environment?
Well, one, I don't see a hyperinflation environment forthcoming. The Fed, we've got a great economy. Everything's under control. They want to keep it at 2. So anytime it gets above 2, they make adjustments, and anytime it's below 2, they keep adjustment. They'll adjust again. So if there was a hyperinflation, and what you're saying there is that the dollar is inflated, so the dollar would buy less and less and less. First thing that's going to happen is the value of our assets is going to increase, right? So at the top of the show, I talked about the difference between money and currency, and our assets are actually money. They're tangible assets. So if the dollar buys less and less and less under hyperinflation, then our assets are worth more and more and more. But our contract with our tenants, with our residents, is the same. You can't just change the rent to change the rent. You've got to follow that tenant. You've got to follow the contract that you have. So you wouldn't be able to adjust quickly at all. Again, I don't foresee any hyperinflation that we have. It just means that our assets, and you're seeing appreciation in your homes because of that already. And so we're keeping up with it. Does that answer your question?
Mike, that's fair enough. Can I ask you a second question?
Sure.
Well, you said that the economy is great, but if the economy is so great, why would the Fed in December make a 180 and start actually thinking about reducing rates again, lowering rates, and possibly even having more QE, quantitative easing?
Right.
Well,
right. So
a strong economy, the Feds get rid of their balance sheet and they start selling off their assets and start raising rates. But can you comment on that?
Yeah, what they're doing, they're doing micro adjustments again as they go through. And don't view this as suddenly everything's going to 180 degree this way or 180 degree this way. It's kind of like driving down a highway with your car. You're constantly slightly adjusting the wheel as you go. And so these are slight adjustments, a quarter of a point here, a quarter of a point there, back and forth. They're just keeping the economy on a path. These are not major forthcoming changes. Everything's as strong now as it ever has been. But the good news is, if you're not in the market, you don't have to worry about the stock market. And if you're in tangible assets, you're going to be just fine, Alex. Because again, those tangible assets, the definition of money, they are money. So I hope that helps. So let's continue our show.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep. Thank you, Alex. Take care. The rules of money have changed, and what are you doing about it? And those rules that were changed was the elimination of the dollar being pegged to the gold standard, and essentially we just talked about it with Alex, with the caller. Dollars are currency. They're not money. So you cannot save your dollars anymore. Saving your dollars is one of the worst things you can do. You've got to put those dollars to work. You've got to constantly convert them and convert them and convert them into assets. And you've got to churn that dollar, and you've got to get it to keep moving. Dale, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We sure can.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is Del Walmsley. I want to answer that question. The reason the Fed lowered the interest rates, that adjustment was made because of all of the tariffs that Trump was putting on China and Mexico, threatening to put on Mexico. And everybody out there believed that these tariffs were going to destroy the economy. The stock market started to go down. There were fears galore everywhere. So the Fed was getting out in front of that fear is all they were doing. There has been no slowdown. There is no slowdown. The economy is blowing and going. It's just they wanted to quell those fears before they started to push back and drop anything at all. And they did. Now everybody's happy again. The stock market's back up. Interest rates are low, and everybody's buying everything they can get their hands on. So I just wanted to bring that up because of something that is a good question, actually, that I had thought about myself. But when I researched it, there's no slowing of the economy at all. All right? Thanks a lot.
Very good.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, Dale. So, continuing our show, the two changes, essentially removal of the gold standard means that you've got to churn the dollar, churn the dollar. It's got to keep moving. Invest in single-family apartments or single-family homes. Invest in apartments. Invest in tangible assets. Saving is futile. And then with the 401k coming about in the late 70s, that's carrying the load of retirement, and it's doing what it was never meant to be, that is the next big change. And the 401k is an abject failure. The results of these changes, taxes are everywhere. If you were listening to the top of the show, we're getting taxed in 97 different ways. The 2% inflation by the Fed is really just a control to they want to keep the economy running at a certain pace. So again, saving dollars, those dollars are going to be worth less and less. Those dollars need to be working for you in tangible assets. 401k killed the pension. The pension's gone, folks. If pensions are out there, consider yourself lucky, but the pensions are essentially gone and have been replaced by the 401k. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. We'll be back next week. That was a great show. Come check us out at Lifestyles Unlimited. This is the Dale Walmsley Radio Show. And until next time, I want you to remember, it's not about the money. It's about the lifestyle.
The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.